Greetings and welcome back to Bible Talks with Belinda. Today, I am so excited because I am getting back to my Bible studies. If you've been following my page for the past few months, I've had a series of dreams that the Lord has given me, and I've come on here and shared them. And one of my prayers to the Lord is like, Lord, I want to be able to interpret a lot of these dreams. And so the Lord has been dealing with me very heavy on the story of Joseph. And I've gone back and I've read it, and the Lord has given me some profound revelation. And one of those was the account of the butler and the baker. Have you ever read that story and wonder why did one of them their ending was going to be to die and the other one was going to be to live, where there's a mystery in the dreams that they told Joseph to give him for him to be able to interpret those dreams. So chapter 40 verse 1, and it came to pass that after these things that the butler of the king of Egypt and his baker had offended their lord the king of Egypt. Now, we don't know exactly what the offense was, but I'm going to share some reasons why I think the offense happened. All right. And Pharaoh was wroth against two of his officers, against the chief, that's key, the chief of the butlers, and against the chief of the bakers. So they were front line to both the butlers and the chief. And in this, the Lord gave me revelation that only the chiefs were able to interact with the Pharaoh. So the chief may have, and I'm just throwing it out there, they may have, for a kingdom like this, it may have been 1,000 butlers. I'm just throwing something out there. Maybe 100 butlers. It may have been 100 bakers, but only the chiefs interacted and served the Pharaoh. Keep that in mind because that's going to be very important with the revelation that the Lord shared with me. All right. So verse 3, and he put them in war in the house of the captain of guard into the prison, the place where Joseph was bound. And the captain of the guard charged Joseph with them, and he served them. And they continued a season in war. It doesn't tell us how long they were in there. It just says a season. That could be days, weeks, months, years. We don't know. All right. And they dreamed a dream, both of them, each man of his dream in one night. I'm sorry, each man his dream in one night, each man according to the interpretation of his dream, the butler and the baker of the king of Egypt, which were bound in the prison. And Joseph came unto them in the morning and looked upon them, and behold, they were sad. And he asked Pharaoh's officers that were with him in the ward of his Lord's house, saying, wherefore look ye so sadly today? And they said unto him, we have dreamed a dream, and there is no interpreter of it. And Joseph said unto them, do not interpretations belong to God? Tell me them, I pray you. Now, this right here, it just really hit me hard because if you all know, I've come on here and I shared so many dreams with you all. And before I share them, I've always gone back to the Lord. I guess I've always thought that you have to have this immediate interpretation, but it's some things that it's like coded, hitting in code. And I've had to go back to the Lord. I'm like, Lord, give me the interpretation or the meaning of this, and I've had to seek the Lord of it. But that interpretation, it belongs to God. Like, don't try to use this was a revelation to me. Don't try to use your own, thinking of what it means. The interpretation belongs to God. All right. And it goes on, verse 9, it says, and the chief butler told his dreams to Joseph and said to him, in my dream, behold, a vine was before me, and in the vine were three branches. That is very important. The number three is critical here. And it was as though it budded, one, and her blossoms shot forward, and the clusters thereof brought forth ripe grapes. And Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes and pressed them into Pharaoh's cup, and I gave the cup into Pharaoh's hand. All right. Then it said, yet within 3 days shall Pharaoh lift up thine. Oh, hold on, wait. Go back to 12. And Joseph said unto him, this is the interpretation of it. The three branches are what? 3 days. And yet within 3 days shall Pharaoh lift up thine head and restore thee unto thy place, and thou shalt deliver Pharaoh's cup into his hand, and the former manner when thou was his butler. So he's going to restore him back fully to the position that he had before. All right. But think on me when it shall be well with thee, and show kindness, I pray thee, unto me, and make mention of me unto Pharaoh, and bring me out of this house. For indeed I was stolen away out of the land of the Hebrews, and here also have I done nothing that they should put me into the dungeon. And when the chief baker saw that the interpretation was good, he was like, hey, here we go. Let me, get in this. We are this interpretation is good. Let me do this. And it says here, I was also in my dream, and behold, I had what? 3 white baskets on my head. And in the uppermost part, can you see this? Okay. And in the uppermost basket, there was all manner of baked meats for Pharaoh, and the birds did eat them out of the basket upon my head. And Joseph answered and said unto him, here's the interpretation. The 3 baskets are 3 days. Yet within 3 days shall Pharaoh lift up thy head from off thee, and shall hang thee on a tree, and the birds shall eat thy flesh from off thee. And it came to pass the 3rd day, which was Pharaoh's birthday, that he made a feast unto the servants, and he lifted up the head of the chief butler and the chief baker among his servants. And he restored the chief butler until his butlership again, and gave the cup into Pharaoh's hand. But he hanged the chief baker as Joseph had interpreted to them. Yet did not the chief butler remember Joseph, but forgot him. Now, when you see this, and we're going to go back up here to the dreams, and I'm going to break this dream down to how Joseph interpreted the dream. Okay. All right. So verse 9, we're going to go over the chief butler's dream, and I'm going to break this down line by line. And the chief butler told his dream to Joseph, and said unto him, in my dream, behold, a vine was before me. And in the vine were 3 branches, and it was as though it budded. 1, her blossoms shot forth. 2, and the clusters thereof brought forth ripe grapes. 3, and Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes and pressed them into Pharaoh's cup, and I gave the cup into Pharaoh's hand. And Joseph said unto him, this is the interpretation of it. The 3 branches are 3 days. Yet within 3 days shall Pharaoh lift up thine head and restore thee until thy place, and thou shalt deliver Pharaoh's cup into his hand after the former manner when thou wast his butler. All right. So I'm going to break this down. So the 3 days were actually 3 days of testing to determine if they were going to be restored to their former position, because whatever offense that had happened was worthy of them being, 1, confined, and 2, of them being stripped of their title. Okay, that's 1. All right. When I looked up the Hebrew meaning of three, the number three, as we know, the three is a divine number because it represents the Trinity, the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost. It also represents the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. It also represents the number three in Hebrew, represents completeness. It represents wholeness. And it also represents restoration, which I thought was very interesting because it is very pertinent to this discussion. All right, so as Joseph said, the three branches represent 3 days, and what Pharaoh was doing was testing them. So on day one, it says that in verse 9, it says it had budded. So the Pharaoh had observed that while the butler was in confinement in the dungeon, he had noticed that the butler had actually matured, because on day one, notice the 3 days, the three vines represent 3 days. He noted he had budded. All right, he had came forth. On day two, he had blossomed. He was really, showing how he had changed and he improved. And on day three, the grapes were ripe, meaning he was at full maturity. He could fully be restored on day two because there was a full maturity and restoration. All right, that's one interpretation. That's one revelation that I got from that. And verse 11 is key. So remember when I told you that only the chief butler, the chief officers were able to serve the Pharaoh. And this butler, he made sure that once the grapes were ripe, verse 11, he said, and Pharaoh's cup was in my hand. And he did what? He took the grapes. He made sure that the grapes were ripe. And once he had the best ripe grapes, he took those grapes and he personally pressed them into Pharaoh's cup, and he gave the cup from his hand to Pharaoh's hand. He gave it to Pharaoh. And that's very critical because he did not place that task off on someone else to do. He personally did himself. He oversaw it. He oversaw the growth of the vine, because there's a dual meaning in this dream, and that's what I'm trying to get you all to see. There's a dual meaning, and if you all some dreams that I've noticed that I've had, they have dual meaning, and I saw that here. So he oversaw the whole thing himself. So he did not trust his subordinates, or he didn't task his subordinates with that task for them to, press the grapes for him, and bring the cup to him, and pour the grape juice or wine or whatever into the cup. And he didn't send someone else to deliver the cup to Pharaoh, because now there's a level of trust that I can trust you with my life. And that's the key. Can I trust you with my life? Because if you have someone else to do this, and you are you slack one day, I could be up out of here. I could be gone. All right, so now let's compare using that revelation that we got from the butler's dream. Let's compare that to the baker's dream. All right. Verse 16, when his chief baker saw the interpretation was good, he said unto Joseph, I also was in my dream, and behold, I had 3 white baskets on my head, and in the uppermost basket there was all manner of baked meats for Pharaoh. And the birds did eat them out of the basket upon my head, And Joseph answered and said, This is the interpretation thereof. The 3 baskets are 3 days. Yet within 3 days shall Pharaoh lift up thy head from off thee, and shall hang thee on a tree, and the birds shall eat thy flesh from off of thee. All right. So if we're comparing the two dreams, the 3 baskets, there were 3 white baskets, and that represented 3 days. However, in the baker's dream, he tells Joseph, out of these 3 white baskets, the uppermost baskets, they were on, for one, they were on his head. All right. And that's important. He wasn't carrying them in his hand. They were on top of his head. They were fully exposed for any bird, person, or whatever to come and have their pickings and their choosing. So he wasn't guarding it. He wasn't safeguarding it, in his bosom, in his hand, and safeguarding it. All right. So that's one. Two, it says in the uppermost basket, there was all manner of baked meats for Pharaoh. Okay, so let's stop right there. Because when I read this, I didn't know what baked meats meant. I didn't know what that was. And I started to press past it, and the Lord said, Go look at what that is. Go look it up. When I looked it up, I was shocked because baked meats is meat. Meat, as far as, I don't know what all they ate back in Pharaoh's day. Let's say lamb, chicken, cattle, beef, whatever. He was a baker, and remember, he was the only one, he was the chief baker, so he was the only one that was allowed to serve the Pharaoh baked goods such as pastries and grains, and all of that, to do whatever goes with baking. But yet he's carrying a basket of meat on top of his head. And furthermore, there were 3 baskets on top of his head. It only mentions what's in the uppermost basket. So what was in the other 2 baskets? Were they empty? Because if that's the case, then let's use the same analogy that we use to interpret the butler's dream, and let's apply that to the baker's dream. So here we have a butler that is carrying meats from who knows who made it. The butcher, um, uh, uh, did he get it off the road? Did he just happenstance? Did somebody give it to him, and he's bringing it to, out of all people, the Pharaoh? It says the baked meats for the Pharaoh, but the only person who should be delivering baked meats to the Pharaoh is the butcher, because the butcher has taken the meat, he has handled the meat, he knows the cuts of the meat, he knows what went into the meats, he knows how the meats were baked, if they were baked at the right temperature, if they were baked using the proper utilities, clean utilities, to make sure that the chief of the butchers should have been delivering the baked meats to the Pharaoh, is what I'm trying to say. The baker should have been delivering baked goods, and on top of that, he should have been carrying them in his bosom, in his hand, or whatever, to secure, to make sure they were not exposed to the elements, to whoever, the birds, to come and pick at it as they please. So on the day that the baker was released, Pharaoh observed him, and he came up 2 days. He came up short, empty handed, because, like I said, there were 3 baskets. Were the other 2 baskets empty? What did the other 2 baskets have in? So it tells you 2 days he came up empty, he came up short. And on the third day, he came carrying, and this is all, an analogy. He came with the wrong thing. He wasn't even working in his assigned role, yet alone a role fit to be chief of as a baker to serve Pharaoh. So, of course, on the third day, he was like, I cannot trust you to be my chief baker. You have learned absolutely nothing in confinement. You have shown absolutely no growth on day one and day two and day three. You're out of here. All right. So I hope you all enjoyed that. If you have stayed for this long, I have a bonus revelation for you all. So, how would you like if you were to land your dream job, but before that, you knew everything about your boss, the CEO, before you even got hired? What type of competitive advantage would you have over all the other applicants, over all the other people, and you knew how what they liked and what they didn't like prior to even getting the role? Well, that's what God did. He gave, with by interpreting the dreams of the butler and the butcher, he gave Joseph insight on how to perform the job that he was going to have in the future before even before even meeting Pharaoh. How awesome would that be? And so I remember I asked the Lord, I said, God, why was, because if you read on, and I'm going to actually do a series on Joseph of all the revelation. If you read on, Joseph was very shrewd. He was a very shrewd businessman. And the reason why is because Joseph was second in command to Pharaoh. He wasn't a chief of the butlers. He wasn't a chief of the bakers. No, he was an extension of Pharaoh. So the chief butler and the chief baker had a chance to be redeemed, to go to confinement for to be redeemed to their former, back to their position. But as an extension of Pharaoh, there was absolutely no room for error at all. So if Joseph was to make one mistake, it wouldn't be go to confinement and you have time to think and get back right on track. No, it was immediately cut. Have your dream job, back then as Pharaoh, as one of Pharaoh's officers or second in command, you either perform the job correctly or it's death. It ain't no getting fired. Like, you die. And it was too much riding on Joseph, the performance. You talking about job performance, it was too much riding on it, because remember, there was a famine in the land. And because Joseph was second in command to Pharaoh, then his family, his brothers, his fathers, and all their kids and wife got to come to Egypt and be put into Goshen, and they were shielded and protected from the famine, and the Israelites were able to exceedingly multiply in Egypt while the family and Joseph was in command. All right. So I hope you enjoyed this. I'm going to be doing a full playlist on Joseph because so much revelation came out of Joseph. All right, y'all, I had finished the video and had uploaded it. And while I was meditating on the video, the Lord had given me yet another revelation. So, and it was a comparison between both the butler and the baker. And what he showed me is that the butler gave Pharaoh his best, right? So he oversaw the growth of the vine. He oversaw the budding, the blossoming, and the full maturity of the vine. And he also took care to to pick the grapes, wait for the proper maturity of the grapes, pick the grapes, personally press the grapes, and deliver it to himself. That is him giving Pharaoh his best versus the butler that showed up with not even, a cake. It was Pharaoh's birthday, and he showed up with meat on birthday, at the least in the dream, he could have showed up with a cake in his hand. So, um, but it wasn't that important to him to, make sure that Pharaoh was well taken care of and that he had the best on the most important day of that Pharaoh deemed, important. It's as if the butler in the dream was, making a grandstand by coming in with the meat on his head to deliver to Pharaoh, to the butler, to the baker. This is better than a cake. This is better than any pastry that I can give you. I didn't make it, but hey, here you go. And that's the same way we have to be introspective and to the Lord. That's the Lord was dealing with me on this. It's like, are you giving God your best, or are you giving him what you think he wants? Right. And just know that there are seasons. Remember, when we read the text, that they were in confinement for a season. And when you are in a season of, of confinement, and usually the season will look like, you regress back, you're not progressing, you're not where you want to be, and this is a time of retrospective and ways for you to reflect on how you can grow and what you can do better. So when it's time for you to come out of that season, are you going to be worthy of promotion? Did you grow? Did you blossom? Did you mature? Lord, I'm preaching to myself now. Lord, I'm supposed to be teaching and I'm preaching to myself. Or did you squander that time like the baker did and had no fruit to bear? Not walking in your calling, not walking in your gifting, not doing what you're supposed to do, the role that you're supposed to feel. So then the question is asked, what use are you to God? What use are you to, if you're not walking in your giftings and your callings that I gave you, what's the point of keeping you around? And that's the same concept that Pharaoh had, you know? What use are you? There's no reason to keep you around. Notice that Pharaoh didn't ask them, are you worthy of being, restored to your duty? No, this was a testing of observation. And it's going to be by observation, and not out what you said out of your mouth. And how you perform is what is in your heart and how you feel about the king. In this scenario, in the account of the butler and the baker, the king was Pharaoh, but in our lives, our king is King Jesus. So I'm going to end this message with two questions. Are you the butler or are you the baker? Take care.